This is Dolynny TV, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Welcome to a Sunday edition of the channel. And while we find ourselves, for the first time this year in a long time, I'm checking out the 9 Things column from Kurt Leavins of the Edmonton Journal, specifically because I wanted to see what was kind of going on here now that things have moved from something's going to happen to it's already happened, right? The coaching change was the big thing that, I mean, I've stayed away from the Oilers in terms of just talking about the Oilers online, talking about the Oilers in general, other than making fun of the blender situation for months now. And that's clear as day. Specifically because there was no path forward with Dave Tippett as head coach. You can say there's no path forward with Ken Holland as GM. There's no path forward with Daryl Cates as owner. But you got to remember, the one thing that I really like Kurt Leavins for is he's always a kind of hindsight's 2020, but also looking ahead with 2020 vision. And the nice part about that is you look back to when Todd McLellan was fired, and he made a comparison, kind of the Dave Tippett thing, the Todd McLellan thing is the same thing all over again. A coach is fired because the roster is not good enough in Kurt Leavins' eyes. That is not the case in my eyes. However, again, kind of look back at that and how that works, right? It's not necessarily the roster isn't good enough. It's more so the roster isn't built for that coach, right? Todd McLellan, say what you will. Again, when you're trying to play a team the way it's not meant to be played, it ends up quitting on you. Happened to Todd McLellan. You go back to that game I watched live and in person, Battle of Alberta at the Saddle Dome, early 2018. I watched an Edmonton Oilers team quit on a coach on that night. You go to the last 2 games that Dave Tippett coached, and you look at the last 2 games Todd McLellan coached, both perfect examples of a team absolutely done with the coach. And that's fine, right? Obviously, both general managers, whatever you want to think of Shirley, whatever you want to think of Holland, took appropriate action once the final nail had been put in the coffin. So yes, you can blame the roster not being good enough for the coach, but when it comes down to the situation, that does not mean the roster is not good enough, period. You know what I mean, right? If the roster is not built for the coach, that's one thing. So you have 2 options. You either blow up the roster and go back full rebuild, which absolutely makes 0 sense in the past 15 years for the Oilers because it has not worked, or you go with the situation, fire the coach, right? If you have a roster not built for the coach, why waste your time trying to build that roster for that coach, keep losing games, keep wasting time, when you can get a coach in that is going to go out and win you hockey games with said roster? And that is, of course, where I look forward to, and of course what you caught in the video yesterday with Jay Woodcroft, is the fact of he has handled this roster. This roster, more or less, whether it be McDavid, whether it be Benson, whether it be Nurse, whether it be Broberg, has won handfuls, many handfuls of games under Jay Woodcroft. And that's where we really look forward to this whole situation with this team, is simply put, Jay Woodcroft has a roster that is good enough for him. Now, what is good enough? Is good enough a Stanley Cup winning team in 4 games straight? Is good enough a Stanley Cup contender? Is it good enough a 3rd round playoff team? I don't know, because at this point, good enough is winning a game in the 1st round, right? Obviously, that's pretty standard. You can't get anywhere in the playoffs if you don't win at least 1, if you don't win at least 2, if you don't win at least 3, if you don't win a series, if you don't get to the 2nd round, if you don't. And eventually we go up the ladder and you get to Game 7 and you win the Stanley Cup in glory, and Zach Kassian scores the overtime goal and he's a hero after everybody running him through the mud. I don't know, right? Obviously, there's a lot of steps to get to before you get to the ultimate goal. However, right, get back to this whole roster situation, is Jay Woodcroft is a coach that is familiar with the roster. He's no stranger to any of these guys, and he's got a team that's capable of being worked by him, as opposed to, right, Dave Tippett's philosophies, say Todd McLellan's philosophies, Ken Hitchcock's philosophies. The Oilers aren't built for those types of coaches, and hopefully Jay Woodcroft is one of those coaches that can go with, right, an 11-7. You saw what that did against the Islanders. Now you kind of work off that when guys get healthy, when things get stabilized, and good to go. However, there was one thing, and this is why, like I said right off the top, I love watching and reading everything Kurt Leavins does, because that hindsight is 2020 and that vision forward is 2020 in most of his articles. And the beauty thing was, right, the Oilers' situation on defense is not on Nurse's shoulders, is not on Duncan Keith's shoulders, not on Evan Bouchard's shoulders, not even on Tyson Barrie's shoulders, as to why this defense can't perform to capable standards that Dave Tippett would have liked. Reason being, and the nice part about Kurt Leavins actually taking his time to write these things, is he pointed it out. That third left D spot, right? Anchoring those extra minutes when either Nurse is in the box, either Duncan Keith is off the bench due to injury, whatever you want to say, that left D spot on the third pairing just can't be amply filled by any Oiler right now, whether it be Niemelainen, whether it be Broberg, whether it be Russell, whether it be Cuckoo, right? Cuckoo's been playing bad. You've got Russell injured most of the year. Broberg's a rookie. Niemelainen's a rookie. Well, right, point to me where you find the solution. And obviously that solution is what it looks like after the game starting on Friday from Mr. Jay Woodcroft's lineup is the fact of, okay, so you need to eat minutes on the D, but also not stress your rookies, and secondarily be able to play a better lineup, is you go 11-7. What you gain by having that fourth option on the left side, because of what you're missing on the left side in terms of the roster hole, and of course what you're missing due to injury, is it's a big gain compared to what you lose taking Devon Shore out of the lineup, right? Benson, McLeod, they're both good, skilled guys. Benson's been a guy who has not been afraid to be physical this year because that's how he stays in the lineup under Dave Tippett. And now we know, right, he's got a long history with Jay Woodcroft. He knows what he needs to do to stay in the lineup under Jay Woodcroft, and we'll see that evolve over time. Obviously, Ryan McLeod, great speed, can play the wing if he needs to like Nuge, can just be an all-around asset as a 10th, 11th forward in tow with Benson. Now, if you want to go 12-6, you've got Pierolini in there. Obviously, Kazian will be back at some point and have to be inserted in. So there's a lot of options, but until then, when you're missing pieces on the D-core, and because you don't have a consistent, as Kurt Leavins pointed out, left third D slot pairing defenseman that goes in there and eats those extra minutes when needed. It's not a question of every night. It's a when needed, bend, don't break situation that has cost the Oilers multiple times this year. Yes, you'd be shocked to know I've watched a lot of Oilers games this year because I've been able to get back to enjoying Oilers games this year despite things not being perfect. But dude, it's life. Ain't nothing ever perfect, so don't even get me started on that tangent of life. But you look at it, right? Bend, don't break, do as needed. And that's all the Oilers are asking. And if Jay Woodcroft comes in with a roster that wasn't good enough for Tippett, but for Jay Woodcroft is good enough based on his history of coaching in Bakersfield and based on his history of coaching with this Oilers team, you look at something very simple and say 11-7, solve the roster hole by not doing a stopgap measure or doing something silly, rather tweaking the lineup to solve the issue on a need-be basis. That's the question, right? 11-7, I mean, ask Bakersfield, it's a solution for them. Under Jay Woodcroft, it was. They did a lot of great things with 11-7. But is it necessarily at the NHL level for the Oilers the end-all, be-all solution of rosters? Probably not, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be. I'm not saying it has to be, but at the end of the day, right, as needed, not even a stopgap. It's not a stopgap measure. It's just an as-needed bend, don't break measure where the coach is smart enough to realize I've got a hole here, rather than try and use this guy to stop this situation from happening, right? Devon Shore, i.e. the penalty kill. Rather, fill that 3 left D hole where you need those extra minutes eaten, but you can't rely on Niemelainen to make the perfect play every time. So you need to have another option. Philip Broberg goes out there. Well, both those guys add very dynamic things to the game. Obviously, Marcus Niemelainen, you saw the Oilers Nation post this week, quickly becoming a fan favorite because of what he does on the ice, what he brings on the ice for the Oilers. And then obviously Philip Broberg, the high talented draft pick who's going to be very stellar for us as he moves forward and evolves under Woodcroft, very similarly probably to Evan Bouchard. Well, suddenly you're talking, guys, you're talking an evolution of this team down the stretch, but also kind of, right, the future is now. Obviously, with Woodcroft as coach, Bouchard's arrived, Broberg's on the scene. There's a lot going on in Oilers Nation that we really aren't keying in on the positives. We're keying in on the negatives. But that's what I like about this article from Kurt Leavins, is simply put, he's saying, right, this is not what has doomed coaches in the past necessarily, but it is what's doomed coaches in the past, right? For Jay Woodcroft, the roster is good enough. For Dave Tippett, Todd McClellan, it wasn't, but it's kind of where the coaching aspect is at, right? And you see it right out of the gate with Jay's first game. So now it's, as we evolve, get guys back healthy, get into the things that this all kind of, does hindsight stay 2020 and does future sight stay 2020, or do things shift around and change? Not really too sure, but at least right now, as this roster is built, it is capable under Jay Woodcroft, simply because of his experience with it, and of course what he has done previously with the pieces he's got available, knowing the holes and knowing how to plug them up. And safely put, no stopgap measures, bend don't break measures, and of course options all around. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tyson. This has been Dolynny TV. My goodness, 2 uploads in a row. We are talking 1,000 views on Dolynny TV today. Let's go. And don't forget, did this yesterday, and I'll put this at the end of the video as well today. The Cold Lake Ice play at 7:30, Game 3 at Imperial Place in Cold Lake this evening. Make sure to tune in on the live stream if you're not local, and if not, guys, you got no excuse. At this point, you got absolutely no excuse if you're in Cold Lake, Bonnyville, Lac-La-Biche, to go on down to Cold Lake Imperial Oil Place and go check out some live hockey on a Sunday night. Come on, you know you want to have a beverage on a Sunday night before you got to go back to the grind Monday. So get on it, will ya? I'm Tyson, Dolynny TV, up on out of here.